Your first foray into music has occurred.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I was walking through town listening to it the other day, laughing like an
Oh, nice.
imbecile. So thank you for that. I now am the certifiable insane person in Northampton Town. What persuaded you to finally give it a go? Because, I mean, one of the things that seems to be thrown your way quite a lot in battle rap is you're not a proper rapper, you've never made an album. And
Yeah.
now you've made one. So what was it that kind of gave you the inspiration or the impetus to do it?
Well, I think for a long time I had sort of written tracks of sorts over the years, but I'd never really released them. They were just things that I sort of held on to and never really finished. And how me and Marlo, who I rap with, when we first started, hanging out together, we started writing tracks and stuff that it started out like that rather than battle rap. But battle rap was the kind of thing where there was a time limit and there were all these things around that meant that you would complete it. There was a date that you had to go and perform it and you had to rehearse it. So it would get completed, whereas tracks and songs always ended up getting half finished for me. And so it was not until it was lockdown basically, which I'm sure is, a lot of people probably have a similar story, but like, because I have a job which is quite sort of scattergunny, and that I just I sort of do a bit of script writing here, a bit of this there, a bit of performance here, a bit of blah blah blah. There's no like stability to it, so I just lost all my work throughout lockdown, and I was just sort of like climbing up the walls, and I got like obsessed with cleaning the house to a fucking insane degree, and like for some reason I took huge pride in that because I was like, at least I'm making a difference in this house. And then I was just like, right, I need to do something. I need to like find a way to start, making money really, using what I do. And so I started up a what do you call it, a Patreon, and I was doing that and making videos and that kind of thing through there. And I realized that a good thing to do through Patreon would be to sort of like give music to make music and sort of release that, because that was to me something that would be a big draw, because I'd never done that publicly before. And so I started making little tracks and coming up with ideas and concepts, and then I realized I had about 9 or 10 of them, and I started thinking, well, maybe I should put this into something. I've got all these ideas, most of them are basically done. They just need a good beat rather than like a standard YouTube beat that I've just found and sort of got from online. So yeah, I put it out there and I started talking to different people. I made a podcast about writing, and a few people reached out when I mentioned that I was making music and said I can work with you. And Lloyd Henderson was one of those people, who's my producer and sort of like partner in my music. And yeah, we started working together, and it just sort of went from there. And I guess it took about a year in its entirety to go from it's all written to the actual finished project, maybe over a year. But it was a really fun process, and that was mostly because like we couldn't go and see each other because of lockdown and stuff. But then afterwards, when I can finally get up there, we just recorded it all in a week and got it all laid down. And he was really good for sort of like bringing that musical side out of me as well. Like, it's a very different type of performance, obviously, doing something on a battle rap stage where you can kind of really take your time to let things breathe, and the performance feels sort of like different because you only get one chance at it, so there's a lot of pressure on it. And so that affects how you deliver it, and you can rehearse it a billion times, but it's always going to be different. Whereas this is the opposite, where like you get one thing and then you just rinse and repeat, do the same thing, record it, listen to it back, edit, make changes, etc., to get the best possible version of it. And so that means obviously that you want to get like fill it full of character and get interesting sort of like flows and rhythms and stuff like that. And he was really good at bringing that out of me, because I'd had no real exposure to doing that myself. It's a really different skill to be able to do it on stage in a battle rap setting with a cappella, and do it over a beat and try to sound natural over a beat.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before, actually. I seem to recall in one of the interviews where you'll forgive me, I'm white, so as I say this, I understand I'm cringy. To ride a beat. You mentioned that you had reservations about performing music because you were confident in your abilities as an on-stage performer, like you say, in feeding off the energy of a crowd, and feeding that energy, versus being in a studio environment where there's no feedback, where there's maybe
Yeah.
you're more conscious of the process. So, what was there a change in mindset in terms of going from not feeling confident in doing it to getting to almost like a fuck it phase where I might as well do it, or was there something that really drove you to want to do it?
I think it was semi fuck it. It was semi fuck it in that I was like, it's been, I think by that point I'd been battling for about 8 years, or well, I mean when we released the EP, it had been 9 years since I started battling, and I was kind of thinking, it's about time I did something in the in this manner, and you're absolutely right. Like, the feedback thing is really a good point. Like when you're live, you will forgive so much more than you would if you weren't. Like, if you watch a stand-up thing on Netflix, a special or whatever, it's unlikely if you're watching that by yourself on TV that you'd actually laugh out loud, even if you found it really funny. But if you were there, there's something about like the organic nature and knowing that person is sort of relying on the feedback from the audience that makes you want to laugh and let them know as a collective that you will like it. Whereas here on the TV, it's not important. And that's the same with music. Like, listening to it, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to react in the same way than if you were seeing it live. And so that, I guess, was a bit of a difficulty for me, because it's hard to know how much you're getting away with when you're performing live. Like, are you a really good lyricist and people are replying to that, or are you a really good performer and an okay lyricist but people are reacting to that? So, and if that's the case, then when they listen to you on an album, they're going to just hear your lyrics and they're going to go, this isn't that good. And for the first time, they're thinking, oh, maybe that's just because he's not that good a writer, and I just like seeing them perform because of their facial expressions or the way that they do it, So you don't know what aspect is, you can't quantify that necessarily, to know what people are exactly responding to, and so what avenues you would fit in. I think for me, it kind of got to a point where, because I had been doing the Patreon, and I was like getting used to the idea of recording just as a way to say, let's try to make some money through Patreon, in a time when no money was being made. I think I got used to flexing that muscle, and then I did get better at it. And I remember there was one point when I was first talking to Lloyd, the producer, where I listened back to the stuff that I'd recorded by myself in my room, and I thought, that sounds terrible compared to what it is now, where I could tell a difference. And I was like, well, if I am improving, then I should keep on that train and then maybe try recording something whilst I'm in the sort of mindset of recording and getting more used to that. And at the end of it, I just thought, in terms of what I was thinking about the judgments or what people might think or how they'd react to it, I just kind of thought, well, I do actually like this. I do enjoy the concepts. I do enjoy the songs. And I think I'm at the point where my delivery, I can listen to it on a track and not cringe, which is my goal, is just to not cringe. And so I thought that's okay, then I might as well record.
That's a critical point, by the way. That's a really critical point about a lot of people when they start doing something that they may be shaky on, is that, like, it's going to be bad. There's not really an awful lot you're going to do, unless you're out of the womb, with a mic and a headset in hand.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to take time for it to not be, because we all the masters in our own minds. In our heads, conceptually, it's fully formed and it's beautiful and nebulous and wonderful. But then when you hear it back, you go, oh God, is that what it sounds like? So it does take time.
What's interesting as well, particular to rap, is that there's because rap is so ego fueled. Like, you listen to 90% of it, and most people will go their whole career or whatever, their whole obsession or hobby with rap, talking about nothing but how good they are at rap.
100%, yes.
That's what most people do, and so to sort of write that convincingly and to feel that, and people are so convinced that rap is completely different to anything else, in that, like, if we were to take music, like, you know, piano, guitar, or acting, or dancing, or any medium, there's something particular to rap where people go, I don't need a single lesson in my whole life. Any other thing, that's not the case. Singers, most singers will have lessons. Most, even comedians, which is probably the closest thing to rap, you know, like in that people think they could just go on and no, I'm just funny, so I'll do it. Even there's loads of courses for comedians to go on, especially in London. But there's something particular to rap where people just go, no, I think I'm just naturally brilliant at this, and I think I'm better than everyone else I've ever met. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can stick with that. When actually you listen to most rap and you go, this sounds like everything else, and you know, I've heard this all before, and that kind of thing. So there's something strange that people just go, I am brilliant at rap, and there's no need to ever barely even practice. I will just practice by writing something, and then what I write will immediately be recorded, and when it's recorded, I'll release it. That's what most people do. They go, here's my first song. Oh, release and record. But record and release. But like, really what you should do is, well, not what you should do, but I mean, that's why I didn't do that, because I think I was kind of aware of that. And battle rap, I happened to kind of take a natural kind of thing to, and I kind of knew what I was doing from early. But really, the performance in terms of rap itself and the technicalities that go along with that, you know, rapping over a beat, that's something I was just like, I don't want to release something until I think it's good. And like you say, people need to learn to be objective and hear themselves and go, this, it's okay that I'm not good yet, because why would I be? I've only just started. It's like if you tried tightrope walking and you fell off and you go, what? This doesn't make any sense. I can walk everywhere. Yeah, you can walk everywhere else, but you can't walk on a tightrope because it's hard. So you have to learn to do it first, and it's all right if you fall off 100 times. That makes sense. You have to.
100%. And that's an interesting point that you raised there with respect to the difficulty in transitioning from one to another when you're already so formidable in one. And, you know, a layman might make the conclusion that, oh, well, you do it on stage. I mean, it's even easier. In fact, you don't have people interrupting you every 5 seconds. You don't have a large angry man yelling at you while you're trying to perform. You know, so what's the problem? But there's the artist the old saying of the artist is his own worst critic. Well, to a degree, the artist has still got to find the wherewithal to release the thing, and if he was his own worst critic, he probably wouldn't release the thing, because it's like, well, no, it's mine and I can't share it with the world. But the fact that you have to confront your own failings and you have to be receptive to it, because that's another thing that stuck out to me about you in interviews, is that the YouTube comments, whether or not people should pay attention to them, shouldn't, and just in general, like when you hear someone's critique, even from a casual, how much do you take on board? You strike me as a critical thinker in this respect, because you've often said, well, look, you know, if it's a personal thing, I won't. But if it's an analytical thing, or if it's something that I can think, let me draw something from this. That maybe there's a nugget of truth to what they're saying. Maybe in not what they've said, but in the truth that they're trying to speak. Like, that's a really important thing too, and I'm glad that you embrace that, because I think that allows you to hone and perfect your craft. Which, again, in rap, like you say, considering how often it is these days when people say this, I hear the same lines a lot. I hear the same concepts a lot. And if the rapper at the end of the song hasn't at least said he's got the biggest penis and the most money and the most biatches, he's kind of not done his job as a rapper. But then I listen to your album, and like, again, I get that it's probably a play on expectation, and it's probably you've touched on a few comedic areas that I think even with the titles of the songs give them away. But like, the one that got me genuinely was Love in a Morgue. Because I kind of assumed where you were going, but then, and I will never forget it, because I remember kind of just sort of going past a really busy section of town centre, Shuff. I want to emphasise this, and kind of going, oh shit, I know where he's going now, and it was great, because you did the classic thing, which is you knew what the audience wanted and what they needed, and you kind of subverted expectation at the beginning of the song, and then you gave it to them in a really direct way. Like, it was almost Bonnie and Clyde-ish at the beginning, like Tupac, Bonnie and Clyde with the gun metaphor. It's like, oh, it's about a gun? Really? I didn't know that. It's like, we'll try to listen to the lyrics. But then you swerve it, but just like, nah, let's just give it to him full pelt. I loved that. I thought it was so funny. I mean, in terms of writing songs like that and recording it, like, how do you approach obviously the comedic element that you want to bring to an album like this, while balancing what I think is important to you in the book that you've produced and in the album, which is your technical ability, your ability to be able to rhyme and make it entertaining.
Yeah, I think with that is that's what I kind of want to be my USP in a way, because most of the time when you hear comedy rap, which I do like, you know, there's comedy rap I do enjoy. Um, Most of the time it's way more comedy than it is rap. It's like it's just a format in which to do comedy. I'd say Lil Dicky, if you know him, is an exception to that rule. Like he sounds like a really good rapper to me. Like um, really knows how to like approach a beat in basically every track. He sounds like a proper rapper and is really funny. um and that's kind of what I wanted to get as well. Not from him, that was kind of something I'd always wanted to get in the battles and all those kind of things. And the balance is actually probably not as tricky as you think, because really if you're working with, you know, rap is basically especially in battle rap, a lot of setups and punchlines, like jokes are, right? It's the same kind of structure. You introduce an idea and then you give a payoff over and over again. And so in what I'm doing, it's sort of like, well, if the payoff is a jokey punchline, then really the technicality just comes from a few things like how nice you can make the rhyme sound, and that kind of thing is fairly straightforward to me. Like, you know, that's my favorite kind of thing to do, and again, I think that's kind of a USP, to make it sound as sort of impressive in the rhyming side as possible. But really that's just coming out of natural formatting and stuff. So the balance isn't too hard to get. It's actually, what I find the most difficult is not going too serious in some of the ideas. Like I did, you know,
Really?
you wouldn't see that in the album, because I tried to make it as comedic as possible and got rid of all the. But a lot of the time when I'm writing, I tend to end up sort of like veering towards a kind of more serious sort of like, or when I say serious, I mean sort of like standard rap kind of thing, you know, like bragging or you know, different kinds of things like that, which isn't me, or like violence, which
Is that
again, that's not me. So I don't want that to represent who it looks like I think I am, because that's not a representation of it. That's just sort of what I listen to. And so I do listen to a lot of, you know, rappers who do sort of the braggy gun, that kind of thing. And I really enjoy them. One of my favorite rappers is Crooked Eye, and Eminem does a lot of that kind of thing, and Royce da 5'9" and people like that. But listening, enjoying it and wanting to replicate it is obviously two different things. Like in the same way that I would watch The Godfather, but I'm not going to make a gangster film, but I enjoy the, you know, it's the same kind of thing. And so when I'm writing, sometimes I tend to go, okay, I could do a thing here about how I've, you know, some wordplay on having a gun, or doing something aggressive, and I want to do it, and I do write it, and then I'm like, right, I'm keeping that, but it's never going to see the light of day because it doesn't represent who I am, and it would be silly to put that out as a sort of, you know, a version of myself.
okay? Is that just because it feels legitimate to the scene that it's in, or it feels? Um, there's a comparison I want to make to battle rap later on, but I'll touch on it very quickly at the moment. Is professional wrestling, I think, in a
Mm,
weird way, has a lot of there's a lot of parallels that people might not be
definitely.
immediately aware of, but my interactions with a Mr. Shotty Horror has kind of illuminated me to the prospect
Yeah.
of, oh wait, that okay. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is a person's legitimacy in battle rap is their bread and butter. If you're not perceived to be a threat,
Yeah.
that crowd participation is pretty quickly going to eliminate you as a threat to someone who you're challenging, unless you can play off that expectation a little bit and catch your opponent off guard, and that can
Yeah.
work in your favor sometimes. On an album, for instance, again, the idea is that you're the one creating the expectation and the tempo, but you're influenced by things, what's contemporary, what's historically relevant. So when you talk about wanting to write in a more serious way, when one of my questions actually was going to be, where's your comedic line? Because I find that some of the things you've written, you get close to a dark place, but then you kind of go, nah, okay, we'll come back into the fun stuff. So, like, do you think, okay, we'll tell you what, let me ask you this. Do you think you'll write something more serious in the future then? Do you think you'll focus more on the technicalities and what you just want to talk about irrespective of the comedic element? Or do you think you'll always stick to what people's perceived strengths of yours are?
I think what I'll probably end up doing for the, I imagine, is having the same kind of feel as like this first album, for example, or the EP, but like maybe have one or two, I don't know, sort of like bonusy tracks or tracks in the middle that have maybe a bit more of a personal or serious bit, perhaps. But I think for me to even need to do that or want to do that, I'd have to have something valid enough that I feel is worth talking about.
100%.
And so like with the and that sounds silly when you think, oh well, okay, well these things that you did put in your first EP, are they worth talking about, like shagging a corpse or whatever? And like obviously they're not, but
Spoiler alert.
They're completely fictitious. And in fact, like the only I promise though, it's the only in the EP, what I like about the EP, what makes it like fond to me, is that almost all the concepts are based out of some kind of truth, apart from Love in a Morgue, which is a silly, just a story. But like the one where it's like Lucky Boy, and it's all about how lucky I am. I've always considered myself pretty lucky, so I wrote a song about like if I was Mr. Lucky, the luckiest person in the world. And then there's a song about I miss games, and that just is, I mean, that's the closest I've got to a personal song, in that I just do miss games, and I got rid of my PlayStation years ago because I was like, I'm too distracted by this, I need to fucking get rid of it or I'll never do any work. So I did a song about how I miss games. And then like Parents Love Me, that just is a track about how I used to always get along with other kids' parents. Like it was just a thing when I was young, and that I was thinking what would be a good brag song, what's something where I could be like, oh, I'm swagged out because of this element. I was like, well, okay, parents just like me, so that's my brag. And then like the other one was You Don't Want to Battle With Me, which is all about like you know, you start off in this situation where you battle someone, you beat them, and then you become best friends, and then you fuck them over right at the end. And that was just based off, the idea was, it just needed a twist at the end, but really the idea was that you don't want to battle with me because we'll just become mates afterwards, I promise. And like that is what tends to happen, is I have a battle with someone and then afterwards we sort of keep in touch and we become friends. And but I just did the extra bit at the end because it needed a bit of a twist. So like all those tracks and those concepts are all things that most of them are all things that I genuinely do, that they have a basis within my personality. So I kind of get that out already. So if there was something I had to deal with in a particularly serious way, then I would feel so self-aware of that it would really have to be something that I felt was deserving of going, okay, I'm going to break the mold here and not do it, I'm going to do something serious. It would have to be something really significant. And to be honest, my life has not been full of many significantly like emotively strong moments. Sure. And you know, I haven't, most rap is about the struggle and about overcoming situations in which you were up against it but you fucking came through it, and amazing. And those situations, you know, that I haven't been through many. I've had a pretty standard life, and so you know, I'm all right. So to go, here's my, even if I was like, here's how I came into the battle rap world and no one really took me seriously, but after a while I managed to go through, then like that's the closest thing I could think to being like a bit of a struggle. But really it took about 2 years, and I was fine really. Like people were just nice and warm and welcoming, so like there was a bit of a struggle coming up against it, but like not really. So it would have to be something really significant for me to want to.
But there are the seeds of another brag song, by the way. Like you start it off as a oh man, I started off in battle rap and it was so hard. But 2 years in, I was the shit, and none of you could touch me. And the best part is, I ain't got anything in my history you could drag up. So it's not like any of you are going to drop on anything on me that I'm not already aware of. So, oh, you missed your tax returns 1 year. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is one thing
I
that
did,
happened.
yeah.
But no, there's something to be said about that as well. In that, in an era where content is king, it's not enough to produce good content. You have to produce it constantly, and you have to produce it in a
Yeah.
digestible way, and you have to produce it in a way that people can instantly identify with. Is what? So what's this album like, Shuff? Well, it's kind of like someone, as opposed to, well, it's my album. Listen to it.
Yeah.
Why am I trying to recontextualize what I've produced to make it like what someone else has produced to
Yeah.
make you decide whether or not you'll listen to it? Is something I really appreciate you saying, because I think, again, we're in an era where it's just talk. You got anything to
Yeah.
say? No? Okay, we'll just talk anyway. What'd you do today?
Yeah.
Did you buy bread? Cool. What kind of bread? Oh man, I tell you, I bought some bread once and it was thick cut, and like, look, no one gives a fuck about any of this stuff. Whereas when you're producing content that has some context or some actual something that's tangible, or something that I can take away from this, that's the stuff worth producing.